Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. It was an incredibly ram-packed weekend of motorsport all over the world. There was, of course, Formula One, and we've got to talk about the FIA, Formula 2, Formula 3, Supercup, Porsche Supercup. Plenty of gossip going on with Formula One, and we have to, as I said, talk about this FIA debacle that seems to be ongoing. WEC in Japan, WRC in Greece. There was Indycar in California, which I actually watched. Tiff, you'd be pleased about that.
Good.
NASCAR, World Superbikes, British Superbikes, and I think
British GT
as
well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The two home championships, but yeah, so much going on over the world. When we get to the end of the show, there's only about two things on next weekend. It's funny how some weekends there's so many championships decided. You know, we had the Formula 2, the Formula 3, the IndyCar championships all ending. So it's quite a lot went on.
Yeah,
you could probably say the Formula One Championship's over as well by now. I think I haven't looked at the mathematical statistics, but I think another cruise by Max has pretty much sealed his second title.
Well, it's just a different level, isn't it? I mean, you know, even when you think Ferrari have got the pace, and they, another amazing pole position for Charles LeClerc and Ferrari, but just haven't got the race pace, and they certainly don't seem to have the race strategy. I think that's
we think A or B. What do you think? What do you think, Carla? Charles, we think B or C. No, we think now Verstappen is going to A, or is it B? But what do you think? You can't ask a driver out there what he thinks. I know the drivers sometimes will say, I don't like that decision. But if the driver hasn't got the overall picture of what's going on, that's just...
Yeah, but so Crofty says that they should be asking the driver, and it's good that they're asking. So Crofty
thinks.
Yeah, so...
Well, not if you've got a proper strategist. I don't think Red Bull ever do. I think... But, I mean, for me, the story of the weekend, there was the Cinderella story of Nick De Vries. I mean, I love occasion. And this is what doesn't happen as much nowadays. Because in the old days, of course, someone would maybe, break a wrist or break an ankle and, be out for a few races, and you get a substitute driver in. Like I made my Grand Prix debut, But, having appendicitis this time as motor racing is thankfully not so dangerous. But yeah, Nick coming in, and it was a weird statistic that sums up the qualifying chaos for these flipping penalties, because Nick qualified 13th but started 8th and finished 9th, and he was racing again. It shows this sort of the teams always we can't risk taking a rookie, we've got to have an experienced driver in one of the cars. And then Nick looked like he'd been there all his life, didn't he? I mean, he had luckily for him done free practice one, hadn't he, in the Aston Martin. He's done a couple of other free practices. He's a Mercedes protege all his life.
I wonder how many drivers have driven two different cars on the same weekend.
Yeah,
around the same track on the weekend.
Just
to sum it up, it was a Cinderella story. He's 27 years old, which is shocking. I thought he was still a young kid. Yeah, it is great. It's great to see. But it took George Russell, it took Alex Albon 3 drives for Williams to get a point. Robert Kubica 11 drives, Nicholas Latifi 28 drives, and a certain George Russell 48 races before he got a single point. So, and Nick De Vries did it on the first drive, and of course, very famously, has got more points in his one race than Latifi throughout the whole season. But Latifi's there for a different reason. He's not there because he's the best driver. He's there because he brings the Wonga in.
Yeah. But hopefully De Vries Albon could be a great pairing next year, depending on who's going to Alpha Tauri and who's going to Alpine, and that all depends on the super license. And we'll come to them.
And we'll come on to experience, because that's really valid now. Because we can talk about IndyCar, we can talk about F2, and we can talk about F3. Because if you're coming from any of those, you've got experience. Okay, maybe not so much F3, but F2, IndyCar. That is experience, and we will come on to that because it's very topical.
But behind all that, there was another cruise for Max. I mean, it's just so superior. When he qualified first and started 7th, and of course came through quite quickly to it. I mean, so dominant at the moment. It's amazing. But then, of course, we have the controversy of the pace car finish. And then the booing of Max on the podium and a few more of those outside things going on.
But I don't think they were booing Max, Tiff. I think they were booing.
When they booing the result, FIA. Okay.
I mean, it happened to be that they were booing when Max was in shot and standing on the podium. But surely it's directed at the FIA because
but the FIA did what they should have done in Abu Dhabi. So why were they booing?
Well, I think the point that a lot of people were making was, why didn't they, when they knew that it wasn't going to be recovered quickly, why didn't they just red flag the race and have the last 3 laps?
But I'm not for that. I know that, that's what, that's entertainment, that's racing. And that's what, of course, what Massey was trying to get in Abu Dhabi, desperately trying to end the race with a race. But, it's a Grand Prix, a Grand Prix is won over 72 laps of strategy and a driver conserving tyres and conserving the car and moving to the top of the leaderboard, not on an argy-bargy into Monza's stupid chicane, on the opening lap, which it would have been. They'd all had soft tyres on and they'd all gone storming down to that ridiculously tight chicane. They probably would have hit each other. And so I'm a bit against that. Nobody else seems to discuss what they have at Le Mans or other GT races, these zones, because they've got this ability to use instantly go down to thingy safety car, a provisional safety car, what's the word for it?
Virtual.
And they will cruise virtual safety car. So you could have a virtual zone because the car was parked perfectly safely. It just happened to be up against the barrier and it was stuck in gear, so they couldn't move it. I mean, in the olden days, you'd just have a waved yellow flag for that zone and you'd just race on, But this obsession with anything on the track, they didn't even have to get the crane out. They could have left it parked there. And you can't do that anymore. That's not allowed. Safety might be hit by someone else.
But the whole thing with the safety car, how long? I agree with you. Virtual safety car, even just in that one zone, or a virtual safety car. But then how long it took for the safety car to come out was just ridiculous. And then how long it took for the safety car to catch up. If you didn't see it, it was like and it's long. It's 3.6 miles. It's one of the longest tracks, if not the longest track at Monza. And it just took an eternity to even get the safety car out there and in the right position. And then you just knew there wasn't going to be any more racing because then they had to unlap themselves. So they did do it properly. I don't mind it ending under a safety car. It's a bit of an anticlimax. I would have loved to see
it's anticlimax,
But then it is a bit of a lottery. Then
the end of the race would have been a bit of an anticlimax. If it hadn't been for the pace car, the safety car, the yellows, we'd have just had 5 more laps of Max cruising out in front, Leclerc cruising in second place.
Leclerc was catching him at 1/10 per lap.
Only another 100 laps, and he might have got. So it wasn't going to be an exciting end. It was going to be a cruise to the finish. So I don't see why people think they're robbed of an exciting end, because it would have been an artificially exciting end, and I don't think that's got its place in Grand Prix racing.
All right. So you think the FIA did the right thing?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I would have liked a bit of razzmatazz and excitement.
Well, of course you would. Yeah.
But yeah,
George cruising in another good run for George. This qualifying was like, but these penalties going on all over the place, a bit mad. Things sort of grid upside down,
Well, again, how long that took? How long does it take to work out some penalties? This goes back to the point that we've discussed on here many times. Should you get, for track limits, for example, in-race penalties, live penalties? And Tiff's always said, no, because it takes too long to work it out. I said, no, it doesn't. With computers these days, it's instant. But of course, look at it. And we'll come on to F3 in a minute, because that was even worse.
They're all over the place, F3s.
Lewis had a very slow start and managed to sort of have quite a solid.
I think he was behind the AlphaTauri for about 5 laps. Didn't seem to go anywhere, did he? But when he come through to the end, he qualified 5th and started 19th and finished 5th. So Lewis got back to where he qualified. It was this qualified. Sainz qualified 3rd, started 18th, finished 4th. It wasn't upside.
I don't like that it's so easy for the fast cars to get through. I don't like that there's such a dominance of Max Verstappen on the first lap where he was up into.
If they've got a straight line speed, he could overtake without DRS. No. Straight. I mean that Red Bull, its aero efficiency is just. I mean, because AlphaTauri have got the same engines, but they haven't got the.
They haven't got Adrian Newey.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they haven't got.
It's got no drag and it's got grip, which is why he could just cruise by in the early laps without DRS. I mean, Sergio again didn't, he struggled a bit when he ended up 6th, didn't he, in the end, or wherever. another quiet weekend for Sergio. And
what's going to happen with Sergio Perez? So Red Bull have been ruthless in the past of getting rid of their drivers when they haven't performed. Why don't you get in a...
I think after sacking Gasly and sacking Albon, I think they've suddenly realised that Max is so superior to anybody else they put in the other car. They think, oh well, everyone likes Checo. Well, let's keep Checo.
Yeah, but I don't see that he's from Mexico and he's got Carlos Slim behind him, but I don't see that he's an amazing bubbly personality.
No, he's not. He's not. It's one that mummies want to hug him, sort of Perez. Yeah, he's not. But I think they'll realise. But the point is, in Mercedes, you get their act together. You know, they've got 2 number 1 drivers. You know, they're going to need a quicker number 2 at Red Bull. Whether Gasly goes full circle and goes back there, I can't see who they might put in there at the moment. That's the only problem.
Well, of course, in the past, over the years, the Formula One teams have been able to base their strategies on their drivers because they know that driver 1 can hold up driver 2 can hold up driver 3, etc., etc. And Ferrari can't. They don't have that because they're too inconsistent. The 2 drivers they're very, very similar, but they're very inconsistent. And Charles is a little bit faster. Mercedes do have that. They're very similar pace, but you certainly don't have that with Red Bull. And
Mercedes back. I mean, so McLaren back. Lando got the best of the rest.
Yeah, brilliant.
Had a better weekend.
Shame with Daniel because he actually had not a bad weekend. Actually, Ricciardo.
This is Monza. Monza's the only track he seems to gel with his McLaren around Monza. I feel sorry for Lando, that Monza win. I think, you know, when Ricciardo winning, that was such an injustice to poor Lando. The only time that Ricciardo got his act together, and it became team orders because Ricciardo happened to be ahead of Lando because they were on different strategies. And then the McLaren said, well, you've got to stay in that zone. And of course, a lot of strategies at Monza, this sort of choice, it was either a sort of start on reds, finish on whites, or start on yellows and finish on reds, and a lot of different strategy caused the field to be split for quite a while. Anyway, it was an all right Grand Prix. There's plenty of overtaking here and there. It was an all right. It was a bit of a snooze, but
I liked the crowd last week in Zandvoort. The crowd were amazing, and this week in Monza, the crowd were amazing. So it helps when the sun's out, I've got to say. But I would have liked to have seen the Ferrari win just for the crowd, but no chance of Max around.
Was FIA also taking about a month to decide about the super license? How could it take so long? I think they've got a meeting, today, to sort things out. But either he's got a super license or he hasn't. Make your flipping minds up because, you know, as we said earlier, this AlphaTauri seat, you know, Christian Horner saying if it doesn't go to Colton Herta, then Gasly will have to stay. Gasly can't go to Alpine. So there's a lot of driver moving still to happen, depending on what the super license announcement.
Next week we'll have a bit of an update on the drivers because it's a bit of a quiet week. No Grand Prix for 3 weeks actually until we go to Singapore. But so we'll have a bit of an update on who's in what team and any comments that you got or thoughts you got. Let us know below there. But how ridiculous! Colton Herta, 7-time IndyCar winner, current IndyCar driver. And they won't let him race in Formula One, or potentially won't let him race in Formula One because he hasn't got the
terrified of breaking a rule. Anyway, as long as they rewrite the point system next year, at least to make sure IndyCar has got better recognition.
Off the back of this, yeah, absolutely. Formula 2.
Yeah, Formula 2. We had 2 champions announced with the driver on the pit wall. It was a bit of a strange weekend in Formula 2. I mean, obviously, Drugovich. The Brazilian, he deserved his champion. He was well out in front of Felipe, and he had a bad start in the sprint race and got taken out, damaged. So he was on the pit wall, but none of his challengers could get any closer. So he wrapped up the title with 3 races still to run, but no interest at all in Felipe Drugovich. And it's, you know, I was quite like Formula One. I always think it has to have an Italian driver, or needs it. It's better. It's a better race. You always feel as well, we need a Brazilian. Now we've got a Brazilian that's dominated the Formula 2 championship, and nobody seems interested in him at all. I mean,
he doesn't bring the money, Tiff.
Well, he's got family money. I mean, the family money's got him this far, so maybe, but you know, it's not in the rumours at all. And Teo Pourchaire, of course, the young kid that everyone ranked, he's sort of fallen apart in the second half of the championship. So he didn't make it. Sprint run again, they were all over the place for us. The Monza track, I mean, they're all banging wheels and going off and cutting corners now, and that was driving mad in Formula 2 and Formula 3. Again, if you cut the corner, whole defending. So you go down the inside line at Monza. You are in the lead ahead of the car behind you. The car behind you comes level on the outside. You then brake stupid late, cut the corner, rejoin. And apparently that's not a penalty because you haven't gained a position. No, but you would have crashed defending your position. So I saw the second chicane. They took all the, which is quite good. They took the big elephant curbs out of the apex, second apex, to stop these poor kids going up in the air. And they seemed quite good, the drivers. They knew when they did cut the apex, they would give the place up straight away. And I think obviously the drivers briefed, and they really look, if you don't want curbs that cause you to fly and like poor old Abby Eaton, damage your spine, you must give those places back. And I think there's that discipline is beginning to move into to motorsport in general, which I think is good. So if we're going to have these chicanes they can cut, they must give those places back. But also you must, if you cut the corner defending by outbraking yourself, but that doesn't seem to be happening.
Yeah, I agree. And it just makes it so difficult. Like you said, I was the one that's saying we should have penalties, or live penalties. But the drivers will stop. I think it's the same as, look at rugby and football. We're big sports fans. So rugby, you don't say anything to the referee. If you do, 10 yards and you go back 10 yards possession. But in football, they surround the referee very famously and mocking him and or her or they. But I think when there's consistency and when they say this is what we're doing every single race, I think then the drivers will do it. It has to be consistent. That's the problem. With the FIA, there seems to be no consistency. It depends on who's there and how they're feeling.
The sprint race, though, was won by Yuri Vips. Congratulations to him. I mean, poor kid. I mean, I know, you can't excuse his racial slur that got him banned from Red Bull, lost all his backing, and he should have won several races earlier that year. He's had a bet. I mean, for him as a human being, I'm sort of happy he won a race from the reverse grid. Obviously, very badly punished for that racial slur. But so Yuri Vips won, the Estonian.
When he was playing Call of Duty with his mates.
I know. Playing a game with your mates. But, if the word comes out of your mouth, you're out.
Yeah.
Jack Doohan, a shame for him. I mean, I'd put him in Alpine. If Alpine can't get Gasly, I think a story like Jack Doohan, son of motorcycle world champion, and he's really been on fire. He had another pole position at Monza, but reverse grid race, I think he just kept out of trouble and finished 10th where he started. But he had some sort of clutch problem. He couldn't get away on the green flag lap, and then he made an awful start from the real grid and dropped about 10th and then clashed with someone at the second chicane, went over the top of someone else. And they were all over them. The first two quarters of the Formula 2 race, it was like end of season, let's go Hooley. And they were in the walls all over the place. But I think Jack Doohan could go straight into Grand Prix car. This fear of, he might crash it and he hasn't got experience, and it's a shame.
But experience.
I know. But it was the veteran Jehan Daruva, Indian driver, eventually won the main race.
I think he's
his third year. I think he hasn't won. He's won a reverse grid race, I think, Jehan. But he's an Indian's leading driver. He's Red Bull back, but I honestly don't think he's done enough to actually be jumping into a Formula 1 car. 3 years in Formula 3. Now he's in his third year in F2. But good. It's as good as a Latifi or a Stroll maybe, but. I was looking for the stories like Jack Doohan just seems to be someone that's good.
We just don't want good. We want exceptional.
Exactly.
And I think there are some exceptions. So you would give Doohan the drive over.
He's an Alpine Academy. Well, what's the point of having an Alpine Academy? If you don't put them into the seats when they come available.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd put Doohan in simply because he's an Alpine Academy. And after all the sort of Oscar Piastri leaving his Alpine Academy, it'd be quite nice to see. Red Bull have been good at doing that. They've given their Red Bull top drivers a chance in F1 and then spat them out quickly or put them sideways. So I just think Jack Doohan, I think Alpine Academy or Drugovic, one of those two, if they can't get Gasly.
Okay.
Not Ricciardo, anyway.
It's probably going to be some name we've never even heard. It's almost certainly going to be Ricciardo. Otherwise, it'll be some name that we never heard of, but just happens to be linked to this multi-billion-dollar sponsorship deal.
But the Formula 3 title also won. The Formula 3 race was better. They actually behaved themselves better than the Formula 2 boys. Should be more experienced.
Crikey, these lads look young. They look so young when you see them.
But obviously, the F3 race ended. The main race ended in a shunt that caused a red flag. And in the end, it was the French kid who won it on the pit wall, Victor Martin, who probably deserved it the most. A lot of other drivers would have if Ollie Behrman, our British guy, maybe if the Zandvoort red flag hadn't come out and ruined his qualifying lap, which he probably would have got at least 6 points in Zandvoort weekend without red flag being thrown at the right time. But of course, he could have lost the championship by other mistakes early on in the year. But Martin's, I think, a worthy F3 champion, French champion. But yeah, he had to sit on the pit lane while they decide whether to cancel the race or results going back a lap and fiddling around. And
it took forever.
I know.
They could have run the last few laps again.
They could have restarted it. They could have counted it back. And then the clock was going and the F1 TV people are saying, you've got to get this programme done. But in fact, the star of the whole weekend was Ollie Behrman, the British kid. He started sixth. He qualified sixth. He started sixth in both races. But in both races, brilliant driving. On the last lap, both times, he was there with the leader. Couldn't quite win it in the sprint race, which was won by the Argentinian Franco Colapinto. But in the main race, he was up there challenging for the lead, having some rather nasty treatment from Zane Maloney, the Barbadian that won the race in the end, who's also come on fire at the end of the season. Maloney punting him off at the chicane, defending a bit strongly going into that tight chicane. So Ollie Behrman really the star, 2 second places, but not enough to get him. In fact, he was third at the point. Zane Maloney got second. So it was good stuff. And I thought the sprint race in Formula 2, the three abreast without hitting each other going on everywhere, was very impressive, actually. Quality driving in Formula 3.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed watching that, actually. It just seems to be a bit more level and a bit... The cars, yes, you got some... Premo's obviously very good, and there's some good teams, but there's not that huge gap that you see in Formula 1 with the cars. Not as big, anyway. Great. Porsche Supercup.
Yes.
Oh, tell me about Harry King.
Oh, so nearly. So nearly. Well, then he finally qualified on pole, which I think is his first pole of the year. He's had some second place on the grids. But he got penalised for clattering into the back of the Dutch guy in the first lap in Zandvoort, when he did lock himself up going down to Tuxedo on the end of the first lap and clatter into the second place car. So he got a 3-place grid penalty. So he started fourth and worked his way up to second, and then he had to catch the leader. It was his teammate, this other very young kid, was Bastien Mousse. But he couldn't quite get by. He got on his bumper with 2 laps to go, but couldn't get away past. So a very strong run from Harry. The win hasn't come this year, but I'm sure he'll be a star of the Super Cup next year, and hopefully a Le Mans driver in 5 years' time or something, which is the other sort of route young drivers can take if they're not going Formula 1. But now that, De Vries has got into Formula 1 age 27, you see all these kids that give up and go GT racing when they're 20 because it's too late for Formula 1. It's almost like the Autosport Awards. You have to be under a certain age, 21 or something, to be allowed to enter. Which I always think it's it's experience. It's the years you've been racing that counts, not your actual age. Yeah, Paul Woodman would be, maybe. Anyway,
I like. Go back to Nick De Vries' Cinderella story, but I like that he just seems a nice guy. He seems a lovely kid, but he said, "My shoulders are killing me." He's got bruises and bangs all over him. So we always say how easy modern day Formula 1 cars are to drive, which of course they are comparatively to those over the years. But it's just all that pressure.
Well, he said when the pace car came out at the end, all of a sudden he relaxed, switched off, and all of a sudden he almost couldn't lift his arms up to turn the steering wheel. There's something that exhaustion, and that's with power steering as well. So you imagine that. Yeah, so good for him. World Endurance Championship. Nobody really notices it. Nobody watches it, because there's only 5 cars in it. Toyota, as expected, back home at Fuji, they fiddled with the balance of power again. A little bit of weight off the Toyotas and the Peugeots, a little bit of power down on the Alpine, which is this grandfathered LMP1 car, which I think is still leading the championship at the moment, somehow. But anyway, Toyota's a dominant 1-2. Alpine was 2 laps down. The Peugeots, of course, they're only running the second race. A few technical problems. They finished 4th and 20th. But of course, no Glickenhaus, so a bit of a damp squid of a race, really. We expected Toyota to be dominant, and they were. So that rumbles on. But World Sport, it is coming. Porsche are coming.
Ryan Cullen, our mate Ryan Cullen was there.
Everybody coming.
With Vector Sport, he was there. They started 5th, got up to 3rd, but and then I think they finished 9th. So, but
it's always a good LMP2. It's always great racing, but all the cars are identical. It doesn't really attract, to attract that much attention, because you always think, World Endurance, you should have different looking cars in every grid. Jamie Collada won the GT, I think, of GT Pro in the Ferrari, so a little British success. But really looking forward to World Sports Cars. It's stumbling along to get rid of this season, and we're going to have Ferraris in a couple of years. We're going to have Porsches and BMWs, and we've got Audis. I always forget who is joining, Chevrolets, Chryslers and things.
Well, that's
it's going to be great.
We missed a bit of gossip.
2 or 3.
Who's joining who? Of course, Porsche are not joining F1 now, so that was a little bit of gossip that we missed in the Formula 1 wrap-up. Are we bothered? Not really.
No. World Rally Championship has been turned upside down for these last. Kalle Rovanperä was going to win the championship 2 rallies ago. He's going to win the championship because he's got such a points advantage that one more decent result. But the Toyota Steamroller has floundered, and Hyundai had a 1-2-3. Hyundai. So it's really bizarre that the team that was in tatters for the first half of the season has come good. Thierry Neuville won, who crashed out leading Belgium, so he was pretty upset. Octanet came second, but upset. He was told to team orders. I didn't like that. And they had a 1-2-3. Danny Sordo, 3rd. Rally started with a lot of excitement. Sebastian Loeb was leading for Ford. Loeb back in the Ford. Of course, he won the Monte Carlo rally, but Ford have had a pretty miserable season. Just when they thought they might get cheered up with a good result, his Ford broke down. So, but even so, Ford still finished 4th and 5th, didn't they? Pierre Loubet, the Frenchman who was chasing Loeb early on, was a Ford 1-2 early on. He finished 4th. Craig Breed had a few problems, finished 5th. And the first Toyota home was 6th place with the Katsuta. Evans broke down, and Rovanperä knocked the back off his car early on. So, got a lot of excitement. And of course, the Acropolis Rally was very exciting, a real tour of damage to cars, terrible stones and rocks, a tough rally. And going back to WRC 3, the juniors, we had John Armstrong equal on points going to this final race, the last round for them. The world boys have got another 4 rallies or 5 rallies still to go. But John Armstrong was vying for the title with the Estonian Robert Vievs. The first day they swapped the lead all the way through the day, but Armstrong had a puncture in the last red day of 5. He was 1 minute and 47 seconds down after the end of the second day. But he clawed it back to 17 seconds off. So he caught 1.5 minutes up, but ran out of time. So well done, John. Good for the British, but the Estonian wins.
Good stuff.
All spectacular rally, but no big controversies.
Spectacular and IndyCar don't often go together.
No.
It was Laguna Seca, which is a spectacular track, but a bit of a funny old track. It's not very good for overtaking.
No. Overtake is hard, unless you're Joseph Newgarden.
Wow, he did some good overtakes. But once that thing ran away, there was nothing really else going on.
So once Joseph Newgarden, he came from about 20th up to 2nd, didn't he, wherever he started?
There's a lovely time when against, what's his teammate, Tiff, I'm sorry. And
Will Power. So Will Power's the one.
Yeah.
He was cruising to a championship win. He was championship leader, and he started on pole. He led the way, and then Palou got past him first, Alex Palou, and then Joseph got by. Yeah, but as you say, there was that radio before he overtook him. They were on the radio, weren't they?
Yeah, they said, go easy on him. He said, I'll go easy on him if he goes easy on me. And but it's some lovely overtaking. I like the look of IndyCar, I like the sound of IndyCar.
It was some awesome. There's always that dab of opposite lock, isn't it? Old fashioned. They finish the call. You hear the revs go up as they spin the wheels, and at the same time the opposite lock goes on. Very low grip track, Laguna Seca, and they do slide around an awful lot.
Is that because of the dust?
Over the winter. I think the dust has also sandpapered the surface. I think it's not much grip on the tarmac all the time. They seem to spend 2 wheels on the dirt half the time. It doesn't slow them down too much.
Well, they did say yesterday that because of the low grip. I was wondering why it was. You just said maybe you got to resurface as well, but they said they were actually taking a lot of wet lines on some of them and weren't going for the apex on the normal racing.
Because there's so much dust out, dirt. Well, they all going off bringing dirt on.
Poor old Callum.
Callum. Oh, Callum. Yeah, no, Callum. Oh, I mean, amazing.
So sorry
one
for
car car team. Yeah, one car team. He hasn't got any experienced driver with him. He's driving in a single car team. He qualified, I think he qualified third, wasn't it? Qualified third, or they qualified second.
Second.
And then he got pushed back to fourth at turn one. He was trying to go around the outside. And then he was running a solid second, third. I think he was leading at one stage where the others pitted before him. And then when he pitted, first time comes out of the pit, the engine broke. Such a shame. But he's going to be a big IndyCar star. And God, was Callum Ilott, another Ferrari Academy.
Yep.
Could have been in Formula One this season, you know, but so close to a Formula One drive. But delighted to see he looks like he's going to make a career out in IndyCar. Palou, of course, winning for Chip Ganassi, while Chip Ganassi's suing him for $60 million for signing with McLaren or whatever he's suing him for. So quite interested at Palou. I guess his first win of the year. He's the outgoing champion. And suddenly got switched on at Laguna and came from 11th. He was through to the lead quite early on. The first half of the race was exciting. The second half was a bit of a cruise.
There's lots of laps as well because it's quite a short circuit. Lots of laps.
But Newgarden overtake, a blind crest, you know, last minute diving a full car length inside the car in front of them to say, right, I'm here.
That's the type of overtake I like. You know, full car length.
Yeah.
Outbreak.
Very tricky corner, real tricky corner as well.
Brilliant driving. Tell me, why do some teams have different liveries on the same team? Or is that my imagination?
I think it's almost, you have to have it, I think, in IndyCar. It's like, it's a sponsorship for one thing. I mean, I remember the McLaren, the old days, they had the Marlboro colours for all over both cars. But I think you do, I don't know if it's a law or not, but yes, they do always have different colours over every car. They change sponsors from race to race sometimes. You'll put a new sponsor on. So
because I'm new to IndyCar, so just been watching it since Tiff been raving about it over the years, and of course you're so used to Formula One, Formula Two, Formula Three with the teams in the same livery, the same sponsors, same everything. But it looks like maybe they're sponsoring the car and the driver as opposed to the team. So. And
a woman driver in IndyCar, Sylvester De Simone, and she was at the back-ish, but she fought through well. I think she finished about 15th or 16th. So it was good to see her out there. She's on the pace-ish. So
she was. And I don't know whether we have any Americans that listen to this. Hopefully we do, from people all over the world. But because the Americans have so many commercial breaks, we have your commentary, and then it'll stop. You go to a commercial break and they'll just show, it's quite bizarre, isn't it, Tim? They'll just show the race going on, but with no commentary for about a minute.
We usually do have, I think, the British kid, he's normally in the studio in London and cuts in, but his system stopped working, so he wasn't on.
Okay, that's fine.
Tom Gaynor comes in. But yeah, it was great to watch the cars around the track. I mean, my rule of thumb is a formula who's only successful. One car going through a corner in front of you is exciting to watch, and that to me is what IndyCar has. You know, a single car going through a corner, plenty of it. You can see the driver, see the steering wheel through his windscreen.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah. And congratulations to Will Power. I mean, what a name for a racing driver, Will Power.
He had a bad year last year. This is his second title. He's a very sort of heart on his sleeve Aussie. You know, he's moaning a lot. Oh, mate, you know, my lap, mate. Oh, mate. Or else he's smiling a lot. And his wife was in the pit lane crying and clutching a stopwatch, and plenty of drama. So,
have you noticed? I did mention this before. Have you noticed that Max Verstappen and lots of the Formula One foreigners, they say mate a lot now as well on their radio?
Mate.
Stuff, right?
Yeah, mate.
Which is a bit weird.
The NASCAR, the other side of the American season, was some pretty exciting racing, but it's a Toyota track. Funny how Toyota they dominated the world sports cars. They have been dominating World Rally, and they dominate NASCAR whenever it goes to, where were they? Kansas. It's funny, you always think NASCARs look very similar, but there do seem to be some circuits. There's only Toyota, Chevrolet, and Ford, you know, the three makes. But when they raced twice, they've already raced at Kansas. The first Kansas race, they filled 5 of the top 6 places. And this weekend, they had the top 3 and 3 out of the top 5. But it was Bubba Wallace came through. There's interesting, again, not just the Toyota manufacturer, but Bubba Wallace was driving the same car that Kurt Busch used to win the race early in the season. So it's the same car, won twice. And Bubba was just in a league of his own. I mean, he just pulled away and left everybody. Because, of course, Kurt Busch had this big shunt. He was concussed. He can't do the playoffs. He qualified for the playoffs, but can't do them, which is why Bubba's in his car to win manufacturer's points. So Bubba was pretty like, very popular winner. Of course, a lot of controversy with, there was some bad racist stuff against the black driver in NASCAR. And he was a bit critical. I think other critics still say he can't drive and he's only got the drive because he's black. There's always the other side of the fence of people. So when he won the race, it was all shush, I've silenced my doubters by this dominant win. Exciting racing early on. Again, it's a sort of 3 wide, 1.5 mile oval. Some big wall hitters early on. They're going 3 wide and nudging each other. Some amazing racing early in the race. He got a bit processional towards the end. But Kevin Harvick, he had a miserable season, finally won a couple of races right at the end to qualify for the 16 driver playoffs. And then he had that fire, his car burst into flames last week, moaning about the poor build quality of his NASCAR. And this week he lost it himself in some bad turbulence dicing with Bubba, actually, right behind Bubba, I think it was, and slammed the wall. So he was out. Tyler Reddick, another front runner in the playoffs, he had a puncture and slammed the wall. Kyle Busch, another front runner, had a big spin and took a tyre off the rim and recovers 26. A lot of drama early on. Then Bubba cruised it. And funny enough, actually, the Toyota that Bubba was driving is a second privately owned team owned by Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin, the Toyota factory driver, as it were, for Gibbs Racing. And he was running seconds. He was catching his own team up ahead of him. He was interviewed after.
Was it an exciting race?
It was for half the race was exciting, and then it sort of petered out to a bit of a procession.
So if you're into American racing, you could have watched one half of NASCAR and the other half of IndyCar, and you'd have had the most.
Yeah, you'd have had a great.
Very good.
But it's exciting. The playoffs are exciting because next weekend there's only one more race now where you have to qualify to get into the final 12. So, for example, bottom of the 16 points is Kevin Harvick. But if he wins Dover, he jumps straight into the final 12. But the other 12 to 16, the 4 that drop out next weekend are decided on points. And Kyle Busch, we had his problems. He's on the outside at the moment of points. Tyler Reddick had his problems just inside. So, again, all this excitement and drama builds up with the way they cut it from 16 to 12 to 8 and then the final 4. So I love the playoffs. Get in there. Get understanding the point system. Because there'll be dice... the next weekend in Dover, right, which is a 1 mile, it's called the Monster Mile. So there'll be someone in maybe 28th place because he's had problems. And if he can finish 26th, he'll get the 2 extra points to go in the bubble or out of the bubble. So this bugs it because the points is literally each position. So literally the place you're in is a point. And if you go past one person, or if someone up ahead in 5th takes 6th of someone else, they'll take a point off someone and then you can drop out of the bubble and the other guy gets in it. So throughout the field, Dover, drama, points. I mean, the boys in F1, they'd be going crazy with all the points. He'd be constantly, he'd be just going through all the points permutations every lap. Because literally every lap it changes. Have a heyday. You'd have a heyday.
I'm gonna usher you on because I love that you're passionate about NASCAR, but you speak about NASCAR more than anything else. We've got so much to go through, and you've got to go and play golf. It's early on.
I know. What's the time of the day? I'm going to be on the road. So, World Superbikes, the other bikes, of course. World Superbikes. Yeah, a lot of drama there because it's the Jonathan Rea, Top Rack Brothers, Gukiogu, Alvaro Bautista trio. Bautista, the Ducati, still leading the championship. But in race number 1, both Jonathan Rea and Top Rack fell off on their own accord. Both.
It's incredible how often this happens.
I know. So Bautista cruised to a race 1 with for Ducati, but then Razgatlioglu was on form, won the other 2 races to close the gap on Bautista at the top of the championship. Meanwhile, Jonathan Rea took Bautista out in another crash. So race 2, Rea, Uda's Kawasaki, took Bautista down. And the final race, Jonathan Rea took 2nd place off Bautista, I think, on the last lap. So lots of drama. It's the 3 of them. It's a 3-man show. Staying on bikes, British Superbikes, talk about 3s. Bradley Ray has been getting quicker and quicker on this Yamaha. First year, I think he's had the Yamaha. Had a hat-trick, won all 3, and now leads the title points before they go to a playoff system. I'm not sure quite how their playoffs work out. I'll find it out. I'll leave that job for you.
Okay, thank you. That's up at Snetterton. Do they do the whole Snetterton 300?
Yeah, the big one. Yeah.
I like Snetterton. It's a good track.
And the other championship in Britain, the British GT. So we had 2 places to go and watch film racing and good at the Grand Prix circuit. Always great spectator track. A tearful story for the Mercedes of father and son, Richard and Sam Neary, when 2 laps to go and their Mercedes and the fuel pump packed up. I do feel for people when that happens. But actually, to show how interesting British GT is, I mean, the race was won by McLaren, second place a Lamborghini, third place a BMW M4, and in fourth place a Mercedes. So lots of variety in British GT. There's GT3, fantastic championship. The Lamborghini of Adam Ballon and Sandy Mitchell, run by a team called Barwell Motorsport, which I think my brother works for. Yeah, but no favouritism. Anyway, their second place brings them closer to the championship leader, Ian Logie, who only, in the Mercedes, who only managed 6th place. So all goes to Donny's for the grand finale in a few weeks' time. So lots of excitement in British GT. And that was about all I can report up from the world of motorsport this weekend.
It was, and it was a very sad week for us being British because we lost our monarch, we lost Her Majesty the Queen. So we pay our respects to her now and wish King Charles III.
God save the King.
Crikey, yes, some footsteps to follow, aren't they? With her. But thanks for joining us.
She was wonderful. Next week, then, only got 2 things: MotoGP from Aragon. That'll be spectacular, and that spectacular circuit. And NASCAR at the Dover's Monster Mile. Everybody else is having a rest. We're going to go through each team, each Formula One driver, and see who's sitting in what seat. So join us for that. That should be quite interesting as well. Cheers. Guys.